By the end of this video, you're going to learn what good looks like when writing a user story in Jira, step by step. We'll cover the best ways to title your stories, what to put in the description, where you can put your acceptance criteria, how you add designs, how you can include a list of subtasks for your team to work on, and link it to key tickets that it might be blocking or dependent on. And then also where you can best tag this so it's easy to find your stories in the future. By the end, you'll know exactly how to structure a user story so your team knows what to create and they're less intimidated by Jira. I'm Sam, I'm a product manager who has released more than 15 different products, and I now coach a team of product managers. And a lot of the time people get really intimidated by Jira. So I want to show you my personal experience of how I use it, what I've learned over the years, and what I think a good user story looks like. With that, let's jump in. For this demo, I've created an example project. It's called e-commerce website, and I've got a backlog of different items. Some are user stories, some are tasks. And I'm going to go into the first one on the list, which I've titled Register for an Account. Now, I point that out in particular because the title isn't actually the user story. If you put a full user story in, like I've got written at the top of the description, as a user, I want to register for an account so that I can log in. Although that looks great, it is hard to find when you're quickly searching across all your stories. So my recommendation as the title is you actually put something in a short form that just summarizes the purpose of the feature. So if you go back to the backlog, for instance, you'll see all of these, they describe themselves very quickly. So if you're just browsing across all of your user stories, you've got a sense of where something might sit. I do still, however, include the full user story for context on who the user is and what the outcome is at the top of the description. Below that, I then put a bit more of a detailed description. So here I've written that new visitors to the e-commerce platform should be able to create a personal account using their email address or social login, e.g. Google or Apple. The registration process must be secure, user-friendly, and validate all required fields. Once registration is complete, users should receive a confirmation email and be able to log in to the site using their credentials. The reason that I put a description here is what makes a great user story, from my experience, is that you put some constraints around it. What is in scope for that user story effectively and what isn't? And the only way to do that is to be very clear in your description on what this means as a story. What should we consider before this story is done effectively? The way then to build on that further is through acceptance criteria. Now, different people will create different forms of acceptance criteria. Sometimes I'll do them as a bullet point list of key things, key considerations for this user story. Maybe they're functional or non-functional requirements, for instance. But what I love to do with my user stories is have acceptance criteria that are effectively written as acceptance tests. And there is a format for this. It's known as the Gherkin format. And the structure is effectively this. You write, given this situation, when I do this action, then I get this result. And you can add examples in there. So I've got a few acceptance criteria in here, which I've written as tests. The first one is successful account registration. And it says, given I am on the registration page, when I provide valid user details, name, email, password, and I click register button, then my account should be created and I should see a confirmation message and I should receive a verification email. So what I'm being very clear in both the description beforehand and also this first acceptance criteria is this includes email, it includes notifications saying confirmation, as well as the actual primary experience within registration. And all of these together enable us to meet the outcome of the user story. Because as a user, I want to register for an account so that I can log in. But I can only do that once I've got that confirmation and that email. I hope that makes sense. Each of my user stories, when I write them, would probably have 4 to 6 key acceptance criteria. That historically has been about the right number for me. So I've actually got 4 different ones here. I've got a scenario for registration with missing fields. I've got one for registration with invalid email format, and I've got a registration with an already registered email. And for each of those, what I explain in the given, when, then format is what I would expect to happen in that scenario. Hopefully that makes sense so far. Now, this is only a pretend user story. It's only a synthetic backlog, basically. But I've also put an example in here just to illustrate that often I'll have some early stage designs within a user story too. So for this one, I just generated something very quickly, but it's to give an indication on what may be some of the key functionality features that you might imagine as part of this user story. And given this is about registering for an account, it's effectively a very high level and low fidelity mock-up. So you've got a registration page, you've got the fact that this has got a Google or Apple login, which is mentioned in the description. It's got some fields for name, email, password, and register. And so this is at the core of it, what this user story is about. You'll notice, however, this isn't a high fidelity design. I actually would expect this to be delivered as part of this user story. And so this is where we come on to the subtasks. Each of the user stories that I use will have a number of different subtasks, which might sit with different people within my product team. Some might be design tasks, others are development, others might be testing. There might also be ones that I haven't listed on here around documentation. There could be bits of research in here, for instance. But what this represents is, for a user story to be completed, it actually needs a cross-functional team to deliver it. But those individuals within the team might deliver different parts. So what I'm trying to get to in these subtasks is a level where you could assign each of these activities to an individual effectively in your team. And so although we've got a very low fidelity design already in here, I've got tasks for design. I've got tasks to say create wireframes for the registration form on desktop and mobile. I've then got design UI components. I've got review UX flow for registration. And then I've got a series of different development tasks, including implementing the front end, setting up some APIs, etc. And then for testing, I've got activities like write front end unit tests and perform end-to-end testing. All of these will be dictated by whatever you've defined in your team as your definition of done. What are all the things you need to do before this is done? But you want to make sure that your subtasks represent that full list. So I would typically be using that list to help guide me. Most user stories or tasks won't be independent of others. They'll be related to something else. It might be that it's blocking another piece of work. It might be blocked by another piece of work. And I would expect my different user stories and tasks to have very clear links to these. This helps me in my planning later, but it helps the team understand the constraints of this user story or task, what needs to happen before, what happens after, and what you need to do as part of it. Then on the right hand side, there are a number of other details. Now I've only filled in a few of these, but I wanted to give you some idea of the key ones that I would fill in. So firstly, each user story or task will have a main assignee. That could be anyone from the team. I've just assigned it to myself for this instance. It's also got a priority level. I mark this one as high. It's really important that people can register so they can use the actual e-commerce website. So I'd see that as a pretty high priority. It's also got a parent. And this parent here is an epic. And it's an epic that relates to user authentication. I'm going to actually briefly open that just so you get an idea of what else might sit in the same epic. So here we go, we've got user authentication. I should really have a description on here as well, but you can see a few different child work items. So we've got the user story that we've been looking at, which is register for an account. You've also got log into an account, you've got implement OAuth integration, and you've got reset password. So all of these fit into the same theme. So quite often you'd expect these to be linked to the user story in some way, but at the very least, they're in the same epic. As this gets taken into sprints, it might have a due date as well. I haven't put anything on here. We might also put some labels on here to help provide extra tagging. We've got a team field should we need it. We've got a start date. I haven't filled in any of those ones. We've got the sprint is linked to. That will automatically be filled by wherever you put it. And then we've got a story point estimate. which I would expect the team to input into. And the reason that I've got such detail on here is this will help the team provide a pretty accurate version of their story point estimate, given what they know about it. I've also related it to a fixed version. These are different releases that we're working towards. So that might be an MVP, if it's a 1.0, for instance, for me, or it could be a later release like 1.1 or maybe a 2.0, whatever you want to use in your team. And essentially, that's it. And that is it. So let's briefly recap. Write clear, user-focused titles. Describe the problem and solution simply. Use Gherkin for acceptance criteria. Add visuals. Create subtasks for all members of your team. Link stories properly and don't skip the details. Remember, Jira is just a tool, but at the heart of it, it's a communications tool. It's about communicating what you want to create to the team. So what I've learned over the years is it's worth building up this level of detail, at least at the point that you want to bring a new story into a sprint. So you need a description, you need acceptance criteria that are super clear, you need some level of designs in there and a breakdown of what the work involves. That way the team can estimate it and know what they're going to work on. I do want to make one thing really clear though. I wouldn't expect all of your backlog to have this level of detail. You only really need this detail at the point you bring it into a new sprint. So maybe a sprint ahead of time, you want to get to this level, but for further items lower down in your backlog, you might have very little. You might have a title, you might have a brief description, for instance, but very little else. You can work on refining this information in preparation for sprints. So don't put too much pressure on yourself to get everything correct from day one, just enough to get the team performing. If you found this video helpful, please let me know by liking the video and maybe consider subscribing to the channel too. I am using this channel to share experiences that I've got from my years of working as a product manager. So if you think that might be helpful to you, why not follow along for the journey? Thank you very much for watching and happy story writing.